Toki, hi, I'm Dr. Paul Davis, and I'm here to talk to you about learning Toki Pona with comics and comics with Toki Pona. Or should I say, kama sona e Toki Pona, kepeken sitelen Toki musi, e sitelen Toki musi, kepeken Toki Pona, tan yan sona po pisa tawi, as represented by the images here. What do you say, Toki Pona liseme? What is Toki Pona? It's an invented language, a minimalist, often called philosophical language, created by Sonia Lang in 2001. It's one of many constructed languages, the most popular being Esperanto, which is way bigger than Toki Pona, but still Toki Pona is bigger in its turn than Klingon, Dothraki, and other fan languages. As recently recognized in its ISO bid, which was successful. And its big feature is it's only got 120 words, or 123, depending on how you count. And now it's about 137, but still, this is way smaller than any other language in the world. Such a small language then was created in part to explore the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis about language, which is, in its strong form, that your language constrains the way that you can think, and in a weaker form, at least, it guides and encourages you to think in certain ways rather than others. And that seemed to be the aim of Toki Pona, that it would be a simplifying language, a good language. The word Pona means both simple and good, to make you not think in great detail about things and to be healing. The story goes that Sonia Lang was feeling very anxious, a bit depressed at the time, and she created Toki Pona to help simplify her thoughts. But Toki Pona is also fun and cute. Look at its smiley little logo. The smile in that image means Pona. The enclosure around it with the emanata there means Toki. Okay, so Toki Pona is what that says. You can learn it, at least you can learn the 120 odd words in a couple of days potentially, or at least a couple of weeks. The grammar is extremely simple. There are no tenses, there are no tenses, there are no plurals or singulars, there are no genders. It's all extremely simple. So you can learn to decode Toki Pona pretty easily. It's much harder to really master it and to be able to speak it fluently because it's so limited. It encourages you to think in quite different ways about language and the way that you do language. There's a bit of Toki Pona here. Pipi, lily, pipi, lily. Pipi is insect, lily small. We see that this one is a ladybird, but pipi lily means little insect. Lilon ma is on or at the earth or ground or land. We see it's a little bit of grass. Telo ko likama. Telo is liquid, ko, clay, so we have mud. Likama is coming. And the insect says pakala, pakala, which is the closest Toki Pona gets to swearing. Bugger up, damage, hurt, harm. So Toki Pona really needs that kind of context. It's so crucial. With such a small language, each word has to carry a great deal of polysemy. And so you need to know what you're talking about in order to be able to talk. You can build it up through language, but it's much better to have images. Toki Pona's home, the Ma Pona, the good land, Toki Pona, on Ma Siko, or Discord, is a bit unhelpful because it's this decontextualized text-only place in its main, and I also find Discord very, very confusing. Reddit is a bit more friendly, and Facebook as well, because images can accompany the text. We have an image here then with a post from Facebook, Okute e kalama pitomolipa, which is listen to the sound of the library. Sitelen likama tan lipuni, this image and writing. And sitelen is a wonderful word, as we'll see later. It means both writing and drawing. Any mark making is from there. It comes from this Facebook page. The person says Tasumi Sona Ala, but I don't know. Nimi pi Jan Sitelen, the name of the person who made it. Jan Sitelen, again, is writer and artist and inker and so on. How wonderful for comic studies. So you see the beavers and the carving in one. Tenponila says beaver one now. O musi ala, you shouldn't be playing. Musi, another wonderful word, means creating art, means playing, means enjoying yourself, amusing yourself. Or pali taso a, work only, please. Ha ha ha. So comics translation is very popular. Here's Jan Sonia on Facebook posting a number of cartoons by Sarah Anderson, which are translated into Toki Pona. And the cartoons give you the referent that you need to be able to make sense of the text here. The first one, top left, is Wawa liweka, power is gone. That could be a light has turned out, but here you have the brain looking sad, drooping. He also says, Sina olape, you should sleep. The Sina is you rather than me, but his droopiness suggests that Wawali Weka means all my energy has gone. I'm feeling tired. Okay. Pona responds. The next speaker, Mikute, I hear you. Miolape, I'm going to sleep. I should sleep. And the brain is seen awake. Okay. So the images, the bright by, and the images next to those images and the sequence of comics all help supply the context we need to make sense of the Toki Pona. Song translation is also interesting, but it seems to me not very helpful. Songs move very quickly. You are quite limited in the number of words you can fit into a song. That's true to some degree of a word balloon as well, but at least you have the comics images around them. Toki Pona wants to build its context very slowly. Toki Pona wants to speak quite simply, where it's really obvious what we're talking about because we're face to face and the world around us can contextualize and disambiguate the meanings. But you can build up very complex scientific ideas from zero. Jan Telokaman, who we meet later, did a video, takes him half an hour to do it, on non-Euclidean geometry, where he does build up the very ideas of that from Toki Pona only, and some images as well. So on to one of the main meals today. Toki Pona writing has many writing systems. It's part of its pleasure. We've been using sitelen Latina mostly, the Latin images here, but in the original book from Sonia Lang herself, The Language of Good, she proposed some hieroglyphs, now known as sitelen Pona, the simple writing system. And with only 120 odd words, you can have each word be a single, simple logogram, right? So this is ideographic or logographic writing. It can have phonetic value as well. So if you want to do a name, you can use the first sound of each word inside a cartouche to indicate that you're using it for its phonetic rather than its meaning value. Okay. You can also then use emoji in the same way. You've got all this set of images that are out there already, and sitelen emoji, sometimes called sitelen pilin. Pilin is thought, emotion, and so on. Could be used, and it doesn't matter what the specific image looks like as in emoji in the context of supporting other texts. It doesn't matter what the specific heart looks like. We know that it means heart. Okay. We'll come back to a similar looking text later, and we'll also come back to sitelen. Drawing, writing, or writing, drawing. That word again is absolutely wonderful. Sitelen means both drawing and writing, and we saw this in the very first slide here. And that's my name again, right down there. At this point, you're surely thinking, how can I learn this power? Well, the language of good, which I've referred to already, is the starting point. It has its own word in Toki Pona, pu, which is a verb, which means to interact with this book. And this was followed more recently, sparking a resurgence of interest in Toki Pona, by ku, the Toki Pona dictionary. Much bigger, fat book. You might think, how can a language with only 120 odd words have such a large dictionary to go with it? Well, it's English to Toki Pona and Toki Pona to English. And what it presents you with is a number of the sort of circumlocutions that you need to be using in order to make sense in Toki Pona. It's not exhaustive, but it is based on a survey of existing Toki Ponists, and it ranks the meanings by what is most frequently used when translating from English to Toki Pona, or understood when translating from Toki Pona to English. There are also plenty of apps, several courses on Memrise, for example. One of my favourite apps was this one from Pentheos, which happen to come alongside the sitelen. I use this because it has a Leitner model method of presenting you with words that you make mistakes on more frequently and testing you less frequently on stuff that you seem to get right every time. But it presented these alongside the very pretty sitelen. And so I found that I accidentally acquired the sitelen. And that accidental acquisition is quite important in what we're going to say later. The other sitelen pona, you can get a memorized course for it, but one of the best ways to do it is kepeken, using sitelen, using images. So this wonderful website here will give you several sentences all in sitelen pona alongside an image, often using cartoon tropes like the word balloon, as we see here, in order to communicate what's being said. So the sitelen pona here says, Mie, the man, li toki. We've seen toki already. Mie li toki, tawa, towards, at. Meli, the woman, okay. Mie li toki, soweli, tawa. Meli, so soweli is the animal there, okay. So you gradually get these repeated sentences, and in red it marks out the new images that are being introduced piece by piece as you follow through this set of sequences that go alongside the grounding context of a comics-like image. And so as you go through these, and it uses transitions like comics like this, you're supposed to match from one panel to the next, that time has passed, for example. You have other enclosures like the thought enclosure, where somebody has a desire. The W image there is wille, want, need. All of these help you to contextualize the set of sentences that you see. Interestingly, you could use this site to learn this entire writing system without knowing Toki Pona, without knowing how to pronounce them in principle, or pronouncing them in a completely different set of ways. I don't know whether anybody's ever done it, but it would be possible. This is a strictly, at the moment here, until we start to use the Nimi, this is a strictly ideographic script. And what you find happens, what I found happens when I was working through that, after a lengthy sequence of comics, it goes into a dictionary where the words are defined monolingually, so they are defined in the sitelen pona itself, is what you acquire is the grammar. It really helps you to get the subject verb object sequence, and those little particles like li, which says subject is finished, verb is about to begin, or rather predicate is about to begin, and which says verb is finished, object is about to begin. We don't have those in English, but when you work through that, you start to acquire Toki Pona. Even better for acquiring Toki Pona is Jan Telokamann's Opiline Toki Pona project. So not just learn Toki Pona, kama sona e Toki Pona, but Opiline Toki Pona, feel it. And the way that he helps you to feel Toki Pona, to acquire it from zero, is he talks to you, you see his face here, he gestures, you see him doing that, he uses expression and intonation, and he uses, as you see, drawings, and he goes straight to comics trope, assuming that you're going to be able to use those comic tropes to make sense of what he is saying and make his input comprehensible. He draws, he writes arrows on things, he writes the names in sitelen lasina, he numbers the word balloons here, which have, and they call them word balloons, they're speech balloons, right? They have images inside them, contextualizing images which go along with what he is saying. This provides the listener with comprehensible input, and Stephen Krashen is one of the theorists whose name is most often attached to this. He suggests that if you get enough comprehensible input, supported with plenty of context, which comics are very, very good at doing, then you will acquire a language without having to explicitly learn its grammar or explicitly work through an app or memorizing of vocabulary. And this is better than doing that, and more likely to get you to a point where you can speak in a new language. I'm very briefly going to do this. I wanted to speak much more about this, but the book on which I wanted to base it did not arrive. Xu Bing's book From the Ground also used a set of very simple images with no language attached to them, no pronunciation attached to them. It looks like a sequence of emoji, bit more complex than that. It uses imagery from signage and all over the place, and has quite a large vocabulary, lexicon, I suppose, where you are never taught this language. You acquire it through the context alone. It's quite hard to start reading this, but the more you do it, the better it becomes, the easier it gets, and you can read through the whole thing. This is not like sitelen emoji, because there's not this strict limited language of 120 odd words with its own grammar and pronunciation. It's a bit looser than that, though I think there is an underlying grammar that they've worked on. And my experience of reading this then was that all of this works. You can learn the language of the book from the ground, listening to Jan Telekoman. I knew Toki Pona already, but it got my spoken Toki Pona to work. When I was reading bande dessinée, I knew a bit of schoolboy French, but the more I read bande dessinée, starting with simple ones with very little words, it got me more fluent with understanding the French, and made my spoken French better. The mode at which you're getting this comprehensible input didn't seem to matter. Okay, last 5 minutes, and this is the next major part of the talk. Sitelen, we've met then. Image writing, or writing with images, was created by Jonathan Gable to look a bit like Maya glyphs and take some of the ideas from Mayan glyphs. They are much simpler than Mayan glyphs, actually, though a little bit more complicated than hieroglyphics. And there are sitelen only channels on Telegram. So this is from that channel by IGNCC. It says pipi lily, and then the enclosure gives the li. It's grammatical, and it tells you what is going to happen. So the image means kama. So pipi lily li kama, little insect comes. Ona is the next symbol. They, it, he. Wile moku is enclosed as the predicate, and then the next enclosure says the object. Wile moku, wishes to eat. Telo loye, red liquid, lon insa me, inside me. I.e., there's a little insect which wants to drink my blood. Toki Pona, by the way, is strictly without recursion. It doesn't have subordinate clauses. It doesn't have relative clauses. Well, it sort of does, but it technically doesn't. Sitelen, on the other hand, does have enclosures, and we've got multiple levels of enclosure here to indicate the grammar, so it's using visual space to communicate its grammatical functions. The last little sentence here is Ike, bad, this is terrible. And the underlining that it's sitting on is exclamation. There means terrible. Means exclamation. Okay, and means laughter. You can see this on the t-shirt that I'm wearing during this presentation. Okay. So sitelen, it's a sequence of art. It's sequential art, but of course the sitelen that we see here is different from the kind of comics sequences of art that we are used to reading. Nassim Nasser by Jan Wacon has its comics images, of course, in sequence in ways that we can recognise, and we read the persistence of the people from panel to panel. We see that one hand maps to another, one drawing of a character maps to another, time moves forward and so on. But the sitelen have their own sequence. The sitelen here in the title says Nassim Nasser, the crazy journey. Underneath that, we read down next, is one, which means one, but also means then unit and part. Nanpa, number, and then the next symbol is luka, the hand. Toki Pona has a very, very simple numbering system. You have 1, 2, and then many. Like many languages in the world, particularly those from pre-literate communities. People have worked around this though, so you have 1, 2, 2, 1 represents the next number, 2, 2 the next, and then once you're doing this and holding up all your fingers, that's luka. And especially if you have a nanpa luka, we can tell that that means number 5. There's a few others. Meliante is the name of the other things, okay? And so within the dialogue, we get a sequence of images which communicates the content. Ona mute lian pi sike noka, cycles on the foot, roller skates. So the sitelen, it has a strict reading order, which you might might recognise. The hieroglyphic blocks are read in this way, and it's very much like the kind of Maya script sequence, top to bottom and left to right, and that itself is similar to the work by Neil Cohn on empty panels reading order, and then even Siobhan's challenge to Cohn has the same kind of reading ideas and explores possible ways of reading. For Siobhan, though, the content matters and guides your reading. Okay, so we have sitelen here, nasin nasa 1, number 2 is Markasi, the land of leaves. Ah, yells somebody from inside, you recognise that. Oh, arwen emi, arwen can mean protect, but somebody calling out might be asking you to save them. And so we're at 20 minutes at this point, so I'll wrap up. Sitelen then is a true lexicon and grammar. Toki Pona in sitelen is a sequence of images which are lexicon and syntax. Comics are not like that. There isn't a lexicon of comicana, so sequential art is a bit of a dubious term to be using for comics. Sina ale li pona a. You all are very good, which is a way of saying thank you in Toki Pona. Thank you.